All right.
So about 5 years ago, one of my now best friends asked me if I would like to attend a women's rights event with her. I keenly remember responding with, yeah, I don't think I'm that hardcore. She of course asked me what the heck I meant by that, and looked at me like I was an idiot. What it meant was that I didn't feel like my opinions or thoughts were valid. I didn't have the knowledge to support what I felt inside. I didn't know where I stood on the issues and having zero experience with civic engagement. In that time of my life, if someone were to ask me if I were a feminist, I would immediately recoil and say absolutely not. All I knew about feminism was what I learned in a very aggressive and domineering household, which held such beliefs as opinionated women are bitches, and feminists were man-haters and lesbians. I didn't know any better. Thankfully, I befriended a couple of women who were far more intellectually and socially savvy than I was at that time. I saw that they identified as feminists, and they didn't fit the mold that I'd been taught in my home and saw in the media. In fact, they shared many similar beliefs and commonalities. They could take a joke. They shaved their armpits and wore bras. They were nothing like what I imagined a feminist to be. This planted a seed of doubt within me. The next year, I began attending college and started taking classes such as social problems, sociology, and women's studies. With that, the veil was lifted. I now wholeheartedly believe in the movement to end sexism, sexist exploitation, and oppression, known as feminism, as defined by bell hooks. But I can absolutely empathize with anyone in here who does not, or perhaps aren't sure. And today, I hope to persuade you, at the very least, to consider the possibility that feminism is in fact for everybody. I cannot take credit for the term feminism is for everybody. That is all bell hooks, influential American author, feminist, and social activist. Bell Hooks has published more than 30 books focused on the interconnectivity of race, capitalism, gender, in which she describes as their ability to produce and perpetuate systems of oppression and class domination. After waiting decades for a basic, relatable text about what feminism is, and more importantly, is not, to make it to the mainstream, she, in the year 2000, published the book Feminism is for Everybody, taking it upon herself to create what she so desperately needed in the feminist community and beyond. Going forward, I'll be referring to your questionnaires. As an aspiring sociologist, I nerded out on these. In 7 short inquiries, I was able to take the feminist temperature of this room. So here are the numbers. 5/6 of you identify as either feminist or unsure if maybe you are. And I was actually quite surprised by this. And I won't lie, this makes my job a lot easier, but it also makes it more fascinating. For you who are gung-ho, I hope to present some possible new ideas. For you on the fence, I hope you hear something that makes you less hesitant. And for those of you who absolutely do not identify, well, I hope that maybe after the speech, when you hear the word feminist, your immediate reaction is not evil. More good news. 100% of you understand that media influences your thoughts and behaviors. You're pretty self-aware. This statistic gives me great hope for each and every one of you, as you have the capacity to acknowledge that perhaps things aren't always what they seem. There's also a general agreement that we do not live in a society based on equitable practices. So great job, guys. So I hope that maybe I can rock some boats, if not your world today. And for the sake of simplicity and time, I hope to break down some of what feminism is not. Feminism is not equality. Over and over in the survey, I kept seeing the word equality. I know I'll be like, whoa. Feminism is about mutuality. A lot of people aren't familiar with this term. Well, in her book, Belonging, A Culture of Place, Hooks suggests that with reciprocity, all things do not need to be equal in order for acceptance and mutuality to thrive. If equality is evoked as the only standard by which it is deemed acceptable for people to meet across boundaries and create community, there's little hope. Fortunately, mutuality is a constructive and positive foundation for the building of ties that allow for differences in status, position, power, and privilege, whether determined by race, class, sexuality, religion, or nationality. Let's go deeper. What is a hard definition of mutuality? Embrace yourself, this is thick. The meaning of mutuality, in the article, The Meaning of Mutuality, Judith V. Jordan, PhD and professor of psychology at the Harvard School of Medicine, breaks down a relationship based on mutuality as such. 1, an interest in and a cognitive emotional awareness of and responsiveness to the subjectivity of the other person through empathy. 2, a willingness and ability ability to reveal one's own inner states to the other person, to make one's needs known, to share others' thoughts and feelings, giving the other access to one's subjective world. 3, the capacity to acknowledge one's needs without consciously or unconsciously manipulating the other to gain gratification while overlooking the other's experience. 4, valuing the process of knowing, respecting, and enhancing the growth of the other. And finally, 5, establishing an interacting pattern in which both people are open to change in the interaction. It is not merely a balancing, an I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine, but kind of a matching of intensity, of involvement and interest, an investment in the exchange that is both for the self and the other. The process of relating is seen as having intrinsic value. My watered-down version: mutuality is not about having exactly what you have. It's about wanting what I want and having the ability and resources and support to meet those needs. Now, I don't know about you, but mutuality sounds so much more appealing. I'll move on to my second rant now. Feminism is not misandry, aka man-hating. I think most of us are familiar with the term misogyny, which is the dislike of, contempt for, or ingrained prejudice against women. Misandry is just the same thing towards dudes. At its core, feminism holds no personal grudge against men. Seriously, what feminism dares to question is a social system based on patriarchal values that instills and reiterates male dominance. Now, a structural functionist sociologist might argue that patriarchal power dynamics are necessary for society to exist and flourish. Well, that's hogwash. I don't know about you, but dominance and oppression doesn't make for a healthy community. The feminism that I and many people practice does not have an opinion on your gender identification or socially assigned sex. The practice of misandry is in direct conflict with the core values of feminism. I cannot press this enough. Feminists are not man-haters. That moves us right along to my third point. Feminism is not just a women's movement. Furthermore, men are not pigeonholed into only ally status. If we look at feminism as a belief structure, based on the definition given earlier, men can absolutely be feminists. As men also suffer from sexism, sexist exploitation, and oppression historically and in current society. Unfortunately, many people have trouble identifying the oppressive, as the thoughts and actions are so ingrained in our culture. Think about it. What is an oppressive expletive that someone calls a man, and this is going to be hard to hear, so I'm warning you. How about pussy, or bitch, or fag? The most offensive labels are based on the idea that if you identify as a man, do not behave hyper-masculine, you are like that of a woman, which is an inferior being. Can you see the flaw in this? It's definitely not mutuality. It's not considerate of the individual's needs and wants. It's hurtful, it's destructive. It's a type of thought and behavior that reinstills the idea that women are inherently inferior and domination and aggression is acceptable. Now, in conclusion, if we have eliminated some of what feminism is not, what we have now is a much broader spectrum and yet a narrower view of what feminism is. As Arthur Conan Doyle once wrote, once you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. The truth here is that feminism is inclusive, it's progressive, it's revolutionary, uncomfortable, yet rewarding. You have the ability and the right to participate ever so slightly by acknowledging that maybe you too could be a feminist, or at least maybe hold some feminist ideals. There was a quote I read in the time of that transition I talked about in the beginning years ago, and it hit a place deep inside of me. This quote was a touchstone in my transition into acknowledging my own feminism. This is my truth and it does not have to be yours. It's from Rebecca West, author, journalist, and literary critic, widely considered to be among the most important intellectuals of the 20th century, published in The Clarion, a British newspaper, in 1913. I myself have never been able to find out what feminism is. I only know that people call me a feminist whenever I express sentiments that differentiates me from a doormat. Thank you.